My teammate stole my presentation and tried to ruin me. I got revenge that left her speechless. The notification pinged on my phone at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was still at my desk, surrounded by empty coffee cups and crumpled post-it notes, when the email from Aurora Health Tech finally arrived. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Maya, your initial proposal has sparked significant interest. We'd like to move forward with a full presentation next week." I stared at the screen, reading the words 3 times before they sank in. After 6 months of cold calls, rejected proposals, and networking events where I'd smiled until my face hurt, Aurora Health Tech, one of the biggest healthcare technology companies in the region, wanted to hear my pitch. This wasn't just any pitch. This was my breakthrough. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of the past year pressing against my chest. Maya Ellison, junior consultant at Davidson and Associates, had been grinding in obscurity while watching mediocre colleagues get promoted around me. But this project was different. This was mine. Aurora Health Tech had been struggling with their patient data systems for months. Their current setup was a nightmare. Multiple platforms that didn't communicate, data silos that frustrated doctors, and security vulnerabilities that kept their IT team awake at night. Most consulting firms had offered them cookie-cutter solutions, generic templates dressed up with fancy PowerPoint animations. But I saw something they didn't. I saw the opportunity to revolutionize how they approached patient data entirely. Not just fixing their system, but reimagining it from the ground up. A full-scale innovation strategy that would streamline everything, from patient intake to discharge, from billing to follow-up care. I called it the Aurora Integration Protocol. The idea had come to me during a late-night research session 3 weeks ago. I'd been studying their quarterly reports when I noticed something odd in their operational metrics. Their patient satisfaction scores were highest in departments that used a now-discontinued legacy system. The newer, supposedly better platform was actually creating more problems than it solved. That's when it clicked. Instead of forcing Aurora to adapt to existing technology, why not create technology that adapted to Aurora? A custom solution that learned from their specific workflows, their unique patient demographics, their particular challenges. It would be expensive upfront, but the long-term ROI would be astronomical. I spent the next 3 weeks living at the office. I interviewed former Aurora employees on LinkedIn, studied their competitors' approaches, and even attended medical conferences to understand the pain points from a clinician's perspective. I built mock-ups, created workflow diagrams, and developed a prototype interface that would make their current system look like it belonged in the Stone Age. The breakthrough came when I realized I could integrate AI-powered predictive analytics into their patient scheduling system. By analyzing historical data, weather patterns, and even local event calendars, the system could predict patient flow and adjust staffing accordingly. It was ambitious, maybe even audacious, but I knew it could work. I called my approach anticipatory healthcare management, the idea that great patient care started before the patient even walked through the door. The prototype I developed was beautiful. Clean interfaces, intuitive navigation, and features that would make Aurora's staff wonder how they ever worked without it. I spent countless hours perfecting every detail, from the color scheme that would reduce eye strain during long shifts to the notification system that would alert doctors to potential medication interactions. 2 days before the scheduled presentation, I was putting the finishing touches on my slides when Sabrina Knox appeared at my cubicle. Sabrina was the kind of colleague who made networking look effortless, always smiling, always helpful, always somehow present during important conversations. She'd been at Davidson and Associates for 2 years, about 6 months longer than me, and had a talent for making people feel like they were her closest friends. "Maya, honey, you look exhausted," she said, perching on the edge of my desk like we were old friends. "I heard about the Aurora presentation. That's incredible." I looked up from my laptop, surprised. I'd been keeping the project mostly to myself, sharing updates only with my direct supervisor. "How did you?" "Office gossip travels fast," she laughed, waving her hand dismissively. "Listen, I know you've been working yourself to death on this. Why don't you let me help polish the final deck? Fresh eyes, you know? I'm great with presentations." I hesitated. The offer was tempting. I was exhausted, and my eyes were starting to blur from staring at screens for 18 hours a day. But something about Sabrina's eagerness made me uncomfortable. We'd never worked together before, and suddenly, she wanted to help with the biggest opportunity of my career? That's really sweet of you, Sabrina, but I think I've got it under control. She pouted slightly, then brightened. Come on, Maya. We're a team here. Besides, I've worked with healthcare clients before. I know what they respond to. Against my better judgment, I found myself nodding. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe it was the way she made refusing seem almost selfish. Okay, but just the slides. The presentation deck. I've got the technical stuff handled. Of course. I wouldn't dream of touching your brilliant work. I just want to make sure the visuals pop, you know? I sent her a copy of my presentation slides, carefully excluding the detailed prototype specifications and the proprietary interface mock-ups I developed. Those stayed on my personal drive, password protected and backed up in 3 different locations. Or so I thought. That night, I went home for the first time in weeks feeling cautiously optimistic. I had a teammate helping me, my presentation was solid, and Aurora Health Tech was finally going to see what I could do. As I fell asleep, I imagined the moment when Julian Torres, their lead technology officer, would realize that my solution wasn't just better than their current system, it was better than anything their competitors were offering. I should have trusted my instincts about Sabrina. I should have wondered why she was so eager to help someone she'd barely spoken to before. I should have asked myself what she meant when she said she knew what healthcare clients respond to. But I was tired and excited, and maybe a little desperate to believe that someone else was rooting for my success. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, ready to incorporate Sabrina's feedback and rehearse my presentation one final time. I had exactly 24 hours before I would walk into Aurora Health Tech's conference room and deliver the pitch that would change everything. I had no idea that everything was about to change in ways I never could have imagined. The printer near my desk was acting up again, spitting out pages at odd angles and making grinding noises that echoed through the empty office. I'd printed my prototype specifications the night before, planning to review them one last time, but the pages had scattered across the floor in a messy pile. As I bent down to collect them, I noticed something odd. The pages weren't all there. I was missing 3 crucial sheets, the ones containing the core algorithm specifications for my anticipatory scheduling system. I checked the printer tray, the floor, around my desk, even the trash can. Nothing. A cold feeling settled in my stomach as I realized what might have happened. But I pushed the thought away. Sabrina was helping me, not sabotaging me. I was probably just being paranoid. I reprinted the missing pages and locked them in my desk drawer. Tomorrow's presentation was going to be perfect. I had no idea that by tomorrow, I wouldn't even be invited to my own presentation. The morning of the presentation, I arrived at the office at 7 a.m., my stomach churning with a mixture of excitement and nerves. I'd barely slept, running through my talking points over and over in my head. Today was the day that would define my career at Davidson and Associates. I checked my email for any last-minute updates from Aurora Health Tech. Nothing. I checked my calendar. The meeting was still there. Aurora Health Tech presentation, 2 p.m., conference room B. At 1:30 p.m., I was adjusting my blazer in the bathroom mirror when my phone buzzed. A text from Sabrina. Hey Maya, bad news about the Aurora meeting. Client had to postpone last minute. Family emergency with Julian Torres. I'll handle the rescheduling. I stared at the message, my heart sinking. After all that preparation, all those sleepless nights, and now this, I typed back. Oh no. Is Julian okay? Should I reach out directly to reschedule? Her response came quickly. No need. I've got it covered. These things happen. Better to wait until the client is ready to focus fully on our proposal. Something felt off, but I couldn't pinpoint what. Sabrina's response was reasonable, even considerate. Corporate presentations got postponed all the time. Still, a nagging voice in the back of my mind whispered that something wasn't right. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a strange limbo, feeling simultaneously disappointed and restless. I tried to focus on other projects, but my mind kept drifting to the presentation I'd been preparing for weeks. Every time I looked at my phone, I half expected to see a rescheduling email from Aurora Health Tech. It never came. The next day brought the same silence. And the day after that. By Thursday, I was starting to worry. In my experience, even postponed meetings usually got rescheduled within 48 hours. Corporate executives didn't leave million-dollar consulting proposals hanging in limbo. I decided to do some casual research. I checked Julian Torres's LinkedIn profile. He'd been posting regularly all week about Aurora's quarterly results and upcoming product launches. Nothing about a family emergency. In fact, he'd shared an article about work-life balance just that morning. The unease in my stomach grew stronger. Friday afternoon, I was debugging a minor presentation issue when the email arrived. The sender was Julian Torres, and the subject line made my blood run cold. Clarification needed, Aurora Health Tech proposal. My hands trembled as I opened it. Maya, I wanted to reach out directly regarding the presentation we received earlier this week. While the technical aspects were impressive, I have to say I was surprised by the change in tone and strategy from our initial discussions. The approach felt somewhat different than what we had originally discussed. Additionally, I was disappointed by the lack of professionalism when you decided not to attend the presentation meeting. I expected better from Davidson and Associates. Could you please clarify what happened? We're still interested in moving forward, but I need to understand the disconnect. I read the email 3 times, each time feeling more confused and horrified. Change in tone, lack of professionalism, not attending the presentation meeting? What presentation meeting? My fingers moved automatically to my phone, dialing Julian's direct number. He answered on the second ring. Julian Torres speaking. Julian, hi, this is Maya Ellison from Davidson and Associates. I just received your email, and honestly, I'm confused. What presentation meeting are you referring to? There was a pause. Maya, we had the presentation scheduled for Wednesday at 2 p.m. Your colleague Sabrina Knox attended and delivered the proposal. She mentioned that you had decided not to participate due to personal reasons. The office around me seemed to tilt sideways. I'm sorry, what? There was no presentation on Wednesday. I was told it was postponed due to a family emergency. Family emergency? Julian's voice sharpened. There was no family emergency. We met as scheduled. Ms. Knox delivered what she said was your joint presentation. Are you telling me you weren't aware of this meeting? My mouth went dry. Julian, I need to be completely honest with you. I was never told about any meeting on Wednesday. I was told it was postponed. I've been waiting all week for a reschedule. The silence stretched between us, heavy with implications. Maya, Julian said finally, his voice carefully controlled, I think we need to have a serious conversation about what happened here. Honestly, I expected better professionalism from you. The presentation we received was, well, it was technically sound, but it felt like someone else's work. And when Ms. Knox explained that you had bailed at the last minute, I was disappointed. Each word hit me like a physical blow. Bailed at the last minute. Someone else's work. The pieces were falling into place, creating a picture so ugly I could barely process it. Sabrina hadn't just helped with my presentation slides. She had stolen my entire project and pitched it herself, telling the client that I had abandoned them. Julian, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, I think there's been a serious misunderstanding. Can I call you back in a few minutes? I need to gather some information. Of course. But Maya, I hope you understand that this kind of confusion doesn't reflect well on your company. Aurora Health Tech values reliability and clear communication. After I hung up, I sat in my cubicle, staring at my computer screen without seeing it. Around me, the office hummed with its usual Friday afternoon energy. People wrapping up projects, making weekend plans, complaining about deadlines. Normal life continuing while my world crumbled. Sabrina had betrayed me in the most calculated way possible. She hadn't just stolen my work. She had positioned herself as the professional one and painted me as unreliable. She had taken my breakthrough moment and made it her own. But as the initial shock began to wear off, something else emerged. Something cold and focused and absolutely furious. I wasn't going to let this stand. The weekend passed in a blur of rage and planning. I spent Saturday morning in my apartment, pacing between my kitchen and living room, replaying every interaction I'd had with Sabrina. How had I missed the signs? How had I been so stupid? But by Sunday, the fury had crystallized into something more dangerous. Cold, calculated determination. I wasn't going to scream at her in the office. I wasn't going to run to HR with accusations I couldn't prove. I wasn't going to let emotion drive my response. Sabrina had played this game strategically, and if I wanted to win, I needed to play it better. Monday morning, I arrived at the office with a plan. I made sure to get to my desk before Sabrina arrived, spending the early hours crafting my response to Julian's email. I kept it professional, apologetic, and carefully vague about the miscommunication that had occurred. I thanked him for his patience and asked for an opportunity to provide clarification in person. I didn't mention Sabrina's name once. At 9:15 a.m., Sabrina appeared at my cubicle with her usual bright smile and a coffee from the expensive place across the street.
Maya, you look so stressed.
Is everything okay? I looked up at her, studying her face for any sign of guilt or awareness. There was nothing. She looked genuinely concerned, almost maternal in her worry. It was a masterful performance. Oh, just client stuff, I said, accepting the coffee with a grateful smile. You know how it is. Tell me about it, she said, settling into the chair beside my desk. Speaking of which, any word from Aurora about rescheduling? I know you were really looking forward to that presentation. The audacity was breathtaking. She was sitting there, asking about rescheduling a presentation she had already given. Either she was a sociopath or she genuinely believed I would never find out what she had done. Actually, I heard back from them, I said carefully. Apparently, there was some confusion about the timing. I think they might have met with someone else from our company by mistake. Sabrina's expression flickered for just a moment, so briefly, I almost missed it. Oh no, that's terrible. These big companies, they're so disorganized sometimes. It's probably just a mix-up. Probably, I agreed. Although Julian Torres seemed pretty convinced he had met with someone from Davidson and Associates about my project. Clients are so fickle, Sabrina whispered, leaning closer like she was sharing a secret. They get confused about who they're working with, especially when there are multiple consultants involved. I've seen it happen before. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Don't worry, Maya. I'm sure we can get this sorted out. Maybe I could help you reach out to them? Sometimes a fresh voice can clear up these kinds of misunderstandings. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or both. Instead, I squeezed her hand back. That's so sweet of you, Sabrina. You're always so helpful. The rest of the week, I play my part perfectly. I acted confused when she asked about Aurora, frustrated when I mentioned the miscommunication, and increasingly defeated as the days passed. I made sure to have these conversations in common areas where other colleagues could overhear, building a narrative that would serve me later. Sabrina, meanwhile, seemed to grow more confident each day. She started dropping hints about a big opportunity she was working on, mentioning healthcare clients in casual conversations, and even suggesting that maybe I should focus on smaller projects until I gained more experience. By Thursday, I was ready to set my trap. I scheduled a Zoom meeting for Friday afternoon, titling it Strategy Brainstorm, Aurora Health Tech Recovery. I invited only Sabrina, making sure to send it from my personal account rather than the company system. In the meeting description, I wrote, "Need to discuss next steps for salvaging the Aurora relationship. Your expertise with healthcare clients would be invaluable." The meeting was scheduled for 4 p.m. in Conference Room C, a small, rarely used room on the third floor that most people forgot existed. Friday morning, I arrived at the office carrying a large bag from the electronics store. Inside was a small, high-quality recording device I'd purchased the night before. I spent my lunch break in Conference Room C, testing the device and making sure it would capture audio clearly from anywhere in the room. At 3:45 p.m., I was sitting at my desk, watching Sabrina gather her things. She looked excited, almost eager. She probably thought I was finally ready to give up, to hand over the Aurora project completely. "Ready for a brainstorm?" she asked, appearing at my cubicle with her laptop and a notebook. "Almost," I said, standing up and grabbing my own laptop. Just need to set up the Zoom call. You know, in case we need to loop in anyone else. We walked to conference room C together, making small talk about the weather and weekend plans. Sabrina was relaxed, confident, already mentally claiming victory. I opened my laptop and launched the Zoom meeting, making sure the recording function was enabled. There we go, I said, settling into my chair. Just us for now, but I'll leave the meeting open in case Julian wants to join later. It was a lie, of course. Julian had no idea about this meeting. But Sabrina nodded approvingly, as if bringing the client into our strategy session was exactly what she would have suggested. Before we start, I said, my voice carefully defeated, I want to say something. I've been thinking about this all week, and I'm not sure I'm cut out for this kind of high-level client work. Maybe you should just take the lead on Aurora. If the client trusts you more, then that's probably what's best for everyone. Sabrina's eyes lit up, but she composed her expression into something appropriately sympathetic. Maya, don't say that. You're incredibly talented. This is just a bump in the road. I don't know, I said, shaking my head. I keep thinking about what went wrong, and I can't figure it out. It's like someone else presented my work, and I wasn't even there. Hook, line, and ego. Sabrina took the bait completely. Well, she said, leaning back in her chair, sometimes these things happen for a reason. Maybe the universe is telling you that you need more experience before taking on projects this big. There's no shame in that. You're probably right, I said, standing up. I'm going to grab some water. Do you want anything? I'm good, she said, already pulling out her phone. Take your time. I walked out of conference room C, leaving the Zoom meeting running and my recording device capturing every word. Then I went to the bathroom and waited. I didn't have to wait long. I stood in the bathroom stall, checking my watch every 30 seconds. 5 minutes. That's all I needed. 5 minutes for Sabrina to get comfortable, to think she was alone, to let her guard down completely. At exactly 4:07 p.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. Someone was heading toward conference room C. My heart pounded as I realized my plan might be about to fall apart. If another colleague walked in on Sabrina, everything would be ruined. But the footsteps passed by. The office was mostly empty on a Friday afternoon, with people either in meetings or already mentally checked out for the weekend.
Perfect.
I waited another 2 minutes, then quietly made my way back toward conference room C. The door was still closed, but I could hear Sabrina's voice through the thin walls. She was talking to someone, her tone completely different from the sympathetic, supportive voice she'd used with me. I pressed myself against the wall next to the door, listening. I know, right? She's so naive it's almost painful to watch. My blood turned to ice. She was on the phone, and she was talking about me. I pulled out my own phone and opened the Zoom app. The meeting was still running, and I could see Sabrina's face in the small video window. She was leaning back in her chair, completely relaxed, her phone pressed to her ear. She had no idea that our private meeting was being recorded. Girl, I bodied that deck, Sabrina was saying, her voice full of satisfaction. Maya didn't even realize I copied the prototype she left in the printer tray. I mean, she's smart, but she's slow. Like, really slow. I had to bite my lip to keep from gasping. The missing printer pages. She had taken them, copied my proprietary designs, and used them in her presentation to Aurora. But hearing her admit it was different from suspecting it. This was proof. No, she has no idea, Sabrina continued, laughing. She thinks the meeting got postponed because of some family emergency. Can you believe that? I told her Julian Torres had a family crisis, and she just accepted it. Didn't even think to check his LinkedIn or anything. The casual cruelty in her voice made my stomach turn. She wasn't just confessing to theft. She was enjoying it. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a desperate career move. This was calculated, premeditated sabotage, and she was proud of it. The best part is, she's ready to just hand over the whole project now. She thinks she's not good enough for high-level client work. Sabrina used air quotes, even though her friend couldn't see them. I've got her completely convinced that she's out of her league. I watched through the Zoom window as Sabrina stood up and walked to the window, still talking. She looked confident, victorious, like someone who had just won a game everyone else didn't even know they were playing. Listen, Maya's got skills, I'll give her that. The innovation strategy she developed? It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. But she's got no instincts, no survival skills. She actually trusted me when I offered to help with her presentation. Like, who does that? Her friend must have asked a question, because Sabrina paused and then laughed again. Of course I felt bad for about 5 seconds. But then I remembered that this is business. Aurora Health Tech is a huge account. Landing them could make my career. And Maya? Maya would have probably screwed it up anyway. She's too idealistic, too focused on the technical stuff. She doesn't understand how to manage client relationships. I was recording everything through the Zoom call, but I also had my phone's voice recorder running, just in case. Every word was being captured in multiple formats. Every casual admission of theft, every laugh at my expense, every detail of how she had manipulated me. You should have seen her face when I told her about the postponement, Sabrina continued. She looked so disappointed, but also relieved, you know? Like part of her was scared she'd mess it up. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Almost felt sorry for destroying my career and stealing months of my work. The client meeting went perfectly, by the way. Julian Torres loved the presentation. He kept saying how innovative the approach was, how impressed he was with the technical depth. Of course, he has no idea that Maya developed 90% of it. As far as he knows, it was all me. She paused, listening to her friend. What do you mean? What if she finds out? How would she find out? I'm not stupid. I covered my tracks. And even if she did somehow figure it out, what's she going to do? Go to HR and say I stole her ideas? It's her word against mine, and I'm the one who delivered the presentation. I'm the one with the client relationship now. Wrong, I thought. You're the one who just confessed to everything on a recorded video call. She should thank me, honestly. I got us in the door with Aurora. The company's going to make a fortune off this contract. And Maya? Maya's going to learn a valuable lesson about how the real world works. Consider it professional development. The arrogance was staggering. She wasn't just a thief. She was a thief who thought she was doing me a favor by destroying my career. I know. It sounds harsh. But this industry is cutthroat. If Maya can't handle someone like me, how is she going to survive against real competition? I'm actually doing her a service by showing her how naive she is. Sabrina walked back to the conference table, checking her reflection in the dark window. She looked satisfied, like someone who had just solved a difficult puzzle. Anyway, I should probably get back. Maya's supposed to be coming back from her little water break, and I need to play the supportive colleague for a few more minutes, just until she officially hands over the project. She was about to hang up when her friend must have asked another question. Oh, the technical stuff? Maya's prototype specifications? I've got copies of everything. She left them in the printer tray, like an amateur. I made sure to grab them before she realized they were missing. So, even if she tries to claim credit later, I've got all the documentation. As far as anyone knows, it was my work from the beginning. That was it. That was everything I needed. I had her admitting to theft, to lying to the client, to manipulating me, and to stealing my proprietary work. I had her laughing about it, celebrating it, and planning to continue the deception. I had her completely. All right, girl, I gotta go. Wish me luck with the final manipulation session. By Monday, this whole Aurora project is going to be mine. She hung up and sat back down at the conference table, quickly composing her expression into something appropriately sympathetic. She was getting ready to comfort me, to convince me that giving up was the right choice. But I wasn't coming back to conference room C. Not yet. I had evidence to save, files to organize, and a presentation to prepare. Because on Monday, Sabrina Knox was going to learn what real professional development looked like. I spent the entire weekend preparing for what I privately called the reckoning. I edited the audio recording, isolating the most damning segments of Sabrina's confession. I organized my evidence into a clear, chronological narrative. Most importantly, I practiced my presentation until every word, every pause, every transition was perfect. Monday morning, I arrived at the office an hour early and sent a carefully crafted email to Julian Torres. Julian, I believe I can clear up the confusion regarding our recent project communication. Would you be available for a brief call this afternoon? I have some insights that might help us move forward more effectively. His response came within 30 minutes. Maya, I'd welcome the opportunity to clarify what happened. How about 3 p.m.? I can bring my project team if that would be helpful.
Perfect.
The bigger the audience, the better. I spent the morning setting up the video call, testing my screen sharing capabilities, and making sure my audio files would play clearly through the conference system. I also sent meeting invites to my direct supervisor, Patricia Chun, and to Sabrina herself. The subject line read, Aurora Health Tech, Project Clarification Call. At 2:45 p.m., I was sitting in conference room A, the large, well-equipped room where we held our most important client meetings. Patricia arrived first, looking concerned. Maya, what's this about? Julian Torres sounded frustrated in his email about project communication issues. I'll explain everything once everyone joins, I said, my voice calm and professional. I think there's been a significant misunderstanding that needs to be addressed. Sabrina walked in at 2:58 p.m., looking confused but trying to maintain her usual cheerful demeanor. Maya, what's going on? I thought we were going to wait before reaching out to Aurora again. I decided it was time to clear the air, I said, opening my laptop. I think everyone deserves to understand what really happened. At exactly 3 p.m., Julian Torres appeared on the screen, along with 2 other Aurora executives I recognized from my research. Maya, good to see you. I have to say, I'm hoping we can resolve whatever communication breakdown occurred last week. Julian, thank you for taking the time. I believe I can provide complete clarity on what happened. I've also asked my supervisor and my colleague Sabrina to join us, since they were both involved in the project. I looked directly at Sabrina, who was trying to maintain her composure, but clearly starting to panic. She had no idea what I was about to do, but she could sense that something was wrong. Before we begin, I said, clicking to my first slide, I want to walk you through the actual technical specifications of the Aurora Integration Protocol. I believe there may have been some confusion about the scope and innovation level of what we're proposing. For the next 10 minutes, I walked through my prototype in detail, explaining every algorithm, every interface decision, every innovative feature. I could see Julian's eyes lighting up as I described capabilities that went far beyond what Sabrina had presented to him. Maya, this is fascinating, Julian said. The predictive analytics component alone is more sophisticated than anything I've seen in the market. But I have to ask, this seems significantly more advanced than what was presented to us last week. That's because what you saw last week was an incomplete version, I said. In fact, it was presented by someone who didn't fully understand the technical architecture. Sabrina's face had gone pale. Maya, what are you doing? I'm providing clarity, I said calmly. Julian, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about what happened last week. Before we continue, I'd like to play a short audio clip that might help explain the situation. The silence in the room was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat. May I asked, hovering my cursor over the play button. Julian nodded, looking intrigued and concerned. I clicked play. Sabrina's voice filled the conference room, crystal clear and damning. Girl, I bodied that deck. Maya didn't even realize I copied the prototype she left in the printer tray. I mean, she's smart, but she's slow. The effect was immediate and devastating. Julian's expression shifted from confusion to shock. Patricia's mouth fell open. And Sabrina looked like she was going to be sick. But I wasn't finished. I let the recording continue. Maya has no idea. She thinks the meeting got postponed because of some family emergency. Can you believe that? I told her Julian Torres had a family crisis, and she just accepted it. Julian's face was hardening with each word. I could see him putting the pieces together, understanding how he had been manipulated, how I had been betrayed. The recording played on. She should thank me, honestly. I got us in the door with Aurora. The company's going to make a fortune off this contract. And Maya? Maya's going to learn a valuable lesson about how the real world works. I paused the recording and looked directly at the camera, my voice steady and professional. Julian, I apologize for the confusion and unprofessional behavior you experienced. As you can hear, I was not informed about the meeting that took place last week. I was told it had been postponed due to a family emergency. I was also not aware that my proprietary technical specifications had been copied and presented without my knowledge or consent. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Patricia was staring at Sabrina with an expression of complete horror. Sabrina herself seemed frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Finally, Julian spoke, his voice carefully controlled but clearly angry. Maya, I owe you an apology. This is absolutely unacceptable. I had no idea that this kind of deception was occurring. Julian, Sabrina finally found her voice, but Julian cut her off. Ms. Knox, I think you've said enough. In fact, I think you've said far too much. He turned back to me. Maya, I'd like to continue this conversation, but I think it should be between you, me, and your supervisor. Ms. Knox, I believe your involvement in this project is over. I looked at Sabrina, who was sitting in stunned silence. Her face was red, her hands shaking, and for the first time since I'd known her, she was completely speechless. Patricia, I said, turning to my supervisor, I have additional evidence if you need it for your internal review. Time-stamped files, email records, and documentation of the original prototype development. Patricia nodded grimly. Maya, thank you for bringing this to light. Sabrina, I think we need to have a very serious conversation after this call. I looked back at the camera, where Julian was waiting patiently. Now, Julian, shall we discuss the real Aurora integration protocol? I believe you'll find the complete version much more impressive than what you saw last week. As I clicked to my next slide, I caught Sabrina's eye one final time. She looked broken, defeated, and completely unprepared for the professional consequences that were about to rain down on her. The student had become the teacher, and class was just beginning. The call with Julian Torres lasted another 45 minutes after Sabrina left the room. She didn't storm out dramatically. That would have required a level of dignity she no longer possessed. Instead, she simply gathered her things with shaking hands and walked out quietly, like someone leaving a funeral. Patricia excused herself from the call after Julian made it clear that Aurora Health Tech wanted to work exclusively with me moving forward. Maya, I'll handle the internal matter, she said, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. Julian, you have my personal assurance that this kind of behavior does not represent Davidson and Associates' values. After Patricia left, Julian and I spent the rest of the call discussing the real scope of the Aurora integration protocol. Without Sabrina's simplified, stolen version clouding the conversation, I could finally explain the full vision, the predictive analytics, the custom interface design, the revolutionary approach to patient data management that would set Aurora apart from every competitor in the healthcare technology space. Maya, I have to ask, Julian said as we wrapped up, how long have you been working on this level of innovation? This isn't something someone develops overnight. About 18 months of research and 6 months of intensive development, I replied. I wanted to make sure I understood not just the technology, but the real-world applications that would make the biggest difference for your patients and staff. Julian smiled for the first time since the call began. That level of dedication shows. I'm embarrassed that we almost missed out on working with you because of what happened last week. What matters is that we're moving forward now, I said. I'm excited to show you what Aurora Health Tech can become. The next morning, Patricia knocked on my cubicle wall at 8:30 a.m. Maya, can you come to my office? We need to discuss yesterday's revelations. I followed her down the hall, expecting a debrief about Sabrina's misconduct. Instead, I found David Morrison, the managing partner of our entire division, sitting at Patricia's conference table. Maya, please sit down, David said. I spent most of last night reviewing the evidence Patricia shared with me, and I have to say, I'm appalled by what happened to you. But I'm also impressed by how you handled it. Thank you, sir. Julian Torres called me personally this morning, David continued. He wanted to make sure we understood how highly Aurora values your work. He also made it clear that they want you, and only you, leading their account going forward. Patricia slid a folder across the table to me. Maya, we're promoting you to senior consultant, effective immediately. You'll be taking over the Aurora account completely, and we're assigning you 2 junior consultants to help with implementation. I stared at the folder, not quite believing what I was hearing. 6 months ago, I had been fighting for recognition. Now I was being handed one of the company's most prestigious accounts. What about Sabrina? I asked. David's expression darkened. Ms. Knox's employment with Davidson and Associates was terminated this morning. What she did wasn't just unethical, it was theft of intellectual property and fraud. She's lucky you're not pressing criminal charges. I hadn't even considered that possibility. The thought that I could have sent Sabrina to jail was both satisfying and sobering. We're also implementing new project security protocols, Patricia added. What happened to you should never happen to anyone else. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in Aurora Health Tech's boardroom, presenting the final implementation timeline to their executive team. The Aurora integration protocol had evolved even further since that devastating Monday call, incorporating feedback from their medical staff and IT department. It was no longer just my breakthrough project. It was becoming the foundation for Aurora's next 5 years of growth. Maya, before we adjourn, Julian said, I want to share some news. Aurora is so impressed with your work that we're featuring you in our upcoming annual report. We're also nominating you for the Healthcare Innovation Consultant of the Year award. I felt a flush of pride that was deeper and more satisfying than any revenge could ever be. This wasn't just vindication, it was recognition of my actual abilities, my real contributions to the industry. After the meeting, I checked my phone and found a LinkedIn notification. Someone had tagged me in a post about rising stars in healthcare technology consulting. The post had over 200 likes and dozens of comments from industry leaders I'd only dreamed of working with. My name was finally attached to my work, publicly and permanently. That evening, as I packed up my laptop at the end of another long but productive day, I found a note on my desk. It was from HR, informing me that I'd been selected to join the company's cross-departmental innovation panel, a prestigious position that would put me in direct contact with clients across multiple industries. I thought about Sabrina, probably somewhere updating her resume and trying to explain the gap in her employment history. I wondered if she understood yet that stealing my work hadn't just hurt me, it had destroyed her own career prospects. Word traveled fast in our industry, and what she had done would follow her wherever she went. But mostly, I didn't think about her at all. I had more important things to focus on. Aurora Health Tech was just the beginning. I had ideas for 3 other healthcare companies, a proposal for a revolutionary patient scheduling system, and a growing reputation as someone who didn't just solve problems. I reimagined entire industries. I didn't just get revenge. I got respect. I got recognition. I got the career I had always deserved. And Sabrina Knox? She got exactly what she had given me. Silence. The difference was, mine had been temporary. Hers would be permanent.